All right. Good evening and welcome to the virtual Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. A few things to start out with for the good of the order. Everyone from the public entering the hearing has automatically been muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you'll be called upon and unmuted. We will ask if you have slides to share or if you can use the planner slides for your visuals. If you have your own slides, your role will change to panelist. This may log you off for a moment and log you back in, and then you'll have the capabilities to share your screen. A quick overview for Zoom. The capabilities and options are different depending on which device you're using. If you're on a smartphone, you'll be limited to only speaking and sharing your camera. If you're on a computer, you can share your webcam if you have one, or your screen when called upon. Some laptops might not have microphone capabilities. If you wish to speak over the phone but watch on your computer, the phone number for the hearing is listed on the email you received when registering for tonight's hearing. For both smartphone and computer participation, there are controls on the bottom of Zoom to virtually raise your hand when you wish to speak on the item you're interested in. If you're attending on the phone with no visual capabilities, you can raise your hand virtually by typing in *9. Again, that's *9 to raise your hand virtually on a phone. I don't believe anyone here tonight is though, so I think we're good. There is a chat function in Zoom. This is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. If the chat function isn't available for you, you can email zoninginfo@cityofboise.org with any technical issues. Our procedures for the public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team, then we'll go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to the public hearings, public testimony, starting with those who have signed up on the electronic sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hands virtually. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We will provide a 30-second warning and then stop you at 3 minutes. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. Then the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Tonight's agenda and proceedings will be almost the same as an in-person hearing, except we might have a bit of a delay as we all learn with this new technology. Please be courteous and kind while we venture through this virtual format. Madam Chair, you have the floor.
And I had unmuted my computer, but my phone maybe not. Can you guys hear me now? Should I start that part again? Yes, okay. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. We make final decisions on conditional use permits, variances, and appeals, and recommendations to the city council on subdivisions, rezones, annexations, and code or comprehensive plan amendments. Any decisions made tonight may be appealed by the city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of the hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. So that's why it's important to give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. That means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and there is no public opposition, the item will be placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed a few minutes ago with staff, applicant, neighborhood association, and then the public testimony. Before we move on, I want to also thank Commissioner Zuckerman, who's been our student commissioner this year. Ben's been a really wonderful addition to the commission, and we wish him all the best of luck going forward. Thank you, Ben. So thank you all for virtually attending tonight, and will the clerk please call the roll?
Stead?
Here.
Schaefer?
Here.
Squires?
Here.
Blanchard?
Here.
Moore?
Here.
Stevens? Gillespie?
Here.
Finfrock?
Here.
Bratnober?
Here.
Zuckerman.
Here.
9 present, 1 absent.
Okay, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. The first item for consideration is item number 1, which is CVA 20-12, Boise City Parks and Recreation at 2690 North Harrison Hollow Lane. This is a variance, and is the applicant here? Please virtually raise your hand. Great, I see that. And are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? I see that hand raised again, so I'm going to take that second hand raise as a yes on the agreement. And is there anybody present to testify in opposition of this item tonight? Please virtually raise your hand. Okay, I see one. Mr. Van Valkenburg, and you are here to testify in opposition of this project tonight?
Actually, I'm just here to ask a couple of questions. I'm a neighbor.
So this, we can either, we can take this item off of the consent agenda consideration, and you'll have 3 minutes to testify for the item. You can ask questions, and the applicant has the opportunity to choose to respond to them or not. Would you like to testify tonight?
If you can still hear me, I would like to do it right away within 3 minutes and then be done. I don't want to wait until the consent agenda is over.
This is item number 1, so it will be the first item, but now is not the appropriate time for testimony. If you would like to testify, you would like to testify in opposition of this project tonight, though, just so I'm clear?
No, I'd just like to ask some questions about,
Okay,
about the proposal.
Okay. If you don't mind just hanging tight a few minutes so we get through the consent agenda, and then we'll return to item number 1.
Very good.
So item number 1 will not be on the consent agenda. So the next item for consideration is item number 2, which is SOS 20-12, Cynthia Beauclair at 3809 North Collister Drive. This is a waiver to the subdivision ordinance requirement. Is the applicant present? Please virtually raise your hand. Great, and are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? We just need a verbal yes if you can.
Madam Chair, we had to change her role to be able to speak. She should be coming on.
So applicant, if you're great. Yeah, I see that you are raising your hands. Thank you. Okay, great. And is there anybody here tonight that is looking to testify in opposition of item 2 tonight? Okay, seeing none, we will place item 2 on the consent agenda. The next item for consent agenda consideration is item 3, CUP 20-16, ALC Architecture at 1303 North Maple Grove Road. This is a modification to a previously approved conditional use permit. Is the applicant present? Great. And is the applicant in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report?
Yes, we are.
Excellent. And is there anybody here looking to testify in opposition of this project, of this tonight? Okay, seeing none, we will place item 3 on the consent agenda. The next item for consideration is item number 5. This is PUD 20-11 and CVA 20-13, JMCO Investments LLC at 4721 North Maple Grove Road and 9045 West McKillen Road. This is a conditional use permit for residential planned development. And is the applicant present? Please virtually raise your hand, which I see. And is the applicant in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? I see that hand raised again. So I'm taking that as an affirmative. And is there anybody here tonight that is here to testify in opposition of this item tonight? Please virtually raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, we will place item 5 on the consent agenda. The next item is item number 6, SOS 20-13, Adam Schaffner at 10301 West Arnold Road. This is a waiver to the subdivision ordinance requirement. And is the applicant present? Please virtually raise your hand, which I see. And is the applicant in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report?
Yes, I am.
Great, thank you. And is there anybody here tonight looking to testify in opposition of this item tonight? Please virtually raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, we will place item 6 on the consent agenda. The final item for consideration of the consent agenda is item number 7, which is PUD 20-10, Andy Thompson Construction, 9401 and 9405 West Ustick Road. This is a conditional use permit for planned residential development. Is the applicant present? Please virtually raise your hand.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And thank you. Are you in agreement with the terms and the conditions of the staff report?
I am, thank you.
Great. And is there anybody here looking to testify in opposition of this item tonight? Please virtually raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, item 7 will be placed on the consent agenda, and the chair will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Schaefer.
I move to approve the following items on the consent agenda. Item 2, SOS 20-12. Item 3, CUP 20-16. Item 5, PUD 20-11 and CBA 20-13. Item 6, SOS 20-13. And item 7, PUD 20-10.
Second.
So we had a motion from Commissioner Schaefer and a second from Commissioner Bratnober. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the vote?
Stead,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
Finfrock,
Aye.
Bratnober.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Great, thank you. So moving on to item number 1, we will first hear from staff, and the floor is yours, Mr. Moser, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commission, please give me a moment while I share my screen. Madam Chair, members of the Commission, before you is a variance from the landscape design standards and a variance to reduce the side yard setback from the service drive on 13 acres approximately, located at 2690 North Harrison Hollow Lane in an LOD zone. As you can see from the vicinity map, the project is located just west of Bogus Basin Road and at the edge of the foothills. A residential neighborhood is located about 300 feet to the west, and a commercial parking lot is adjacent to the south. To the north and east of the site is open land. The applicant is requesting a variance from the landscape design standards that require a planter island every 10 parking spaces, and for the service drive associated with the new Harrison Hollow Park or Trailhead parking lot to encroach into the side yard setback right here. The variances are demonstrated on the site plan. The site currently contains the Harrison Hollow Trailhead, which is unimproved, and the public currently uses the private parking lot adjacent to the site. The variances to the landscape design standards and to the side setback will allow the existing trailhead to be improved with a dedicated parking lot and a public restroom. The exceptional circumstance that justifies the variance from the design or from the landscape standards that require a planter island every 10 spaces is the poor drainage associated with the site. To accommodate the site drainage, the applicant proposes to use pavers, which requires an even flow of stormwater over the paver surface. In addition, the installation of internal planter islands in conjunction with permeable pavers would affect the future health of the trees within these planter islands. There is also a hardship associated with the variance to reduce the side setback for the service drive, which is the configuration of the parcel and the limited amount of street frontage along the right-of-way, which is Harrison Hollow Lane. To accommodate the service drive width, a variance from the side setback is required, which is demonstrated on the site plan. This site plan is just to note that there was a glitch in the project report. The explanation letter submitted by the applicant failed to show this diagram right here, so I'm just showing it. It's pretty much the same diagram except that I just showed, except it just details a little bit more information on the variance from the side setback. So just to keep this short, in conclusion, the planning team recommends approval of the variance since it complies with all the required findings as per code. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moser. Would the applicant, so next up would be the applicant's opportunity to speak. Would Boise Parks and Recreation like to start with 10 minutes?
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. As always, I'd like to say I'm Trevor Kestner with the Boise Parks and Recreation Department. My address is 1104 West Royal Boulevard. Mr. Moser did a really thorough outline of the section of code that we are seeking a variance for. We believe that this project will do a great job in formalizing trail access in the area. We think it's needed to direct and educate the public for the appropriate uses and the trails within the greater reserve. We think these improvements are going to be widely accepted by the neighborhood association and the current users. We engaged the public in a pretty robust input process for the design of this parking lot and the improvements associated with this. So that's pretty simply, that's it. So I will stand for any questions you or the public might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And so next up we'd have the Neighborhood Association. Is there anybody present that is here to represent the Highlands Neighborhood Association or Central Foothills Neighborhood Association? Please virtually raise your hand if there is. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to questions from the commission. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for the applicant or Mr. Moser? Okay, hearing none. Then we will, and there was no sign-up sheet for this item, so I'll move right along to Mr. Van Valkenburg. If you would like to please start with your name and address,
Sure.
And you will have 3 minutes.
That's great. Thank you. My name is Jack Van Valkenburg. I live at 2605 North Terrace Way, Boise 83702. So my home looks down upon Harrison Hollow, and I've been in touch and met today with my neighbors, the McGee's, and we just had questions. I think we are supportive of this application, but I would like to inform them answers to. Maybe I could list I don't think you allow for a back and forth. So I'm going to list my questions, and hopefully by number, you folks or the applicant or Mr. Moser would be able to respond. my questions would be, one, how far beyond the existing parking lot that with the base basketball hoop, how far beyond that will pavement extend? That's number one. Number two, will the large tree that is beyond the picnic table and the bench, that's a huge willow that is maybe 30 or 40 feet beyond the parking lot, will that need to come down? Three, what replacement trees will there be? Four, how much wider or longer will the pavement be of the parking lot? Five, will the path be, quote, improved, i.e. Made into anything that a car could go on? Number six, is the existing, I heard from Mr. Moser that the existing trailhead is going to be improved. I'd like to know what I'm fine with improvement so long as it's not pavement or enlargement. Number seven, I'll conclude, number seven I'll say is there was a comment that to accommodate the service drive width, some sort of variation is going to be required. And I don't know what kind of expansion of the service drive.
Seconds.
Is that 3 minutes?
Yeah, that's your time. Thank you so much.
He has 30 seconds left.
30 seconds, I'd like that. So the last question is just a comment that I believe in the documents that are provided, there was a memo referred to that indicated that there was notification provided, I believe on December 4th about a neighborhood hearing or meeting, and neither myself nor my neighbor received any such notification, and so nobody attended that neighborhood meeting. And I think that was at Longfellow School. That's all. That's just an FYI.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody else attending tonight that would like to testify on this item? Please virtually raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to a rebuttal from the applicant, if they'd like to address those questions.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for the time. I'll try to address Mr. Van Valkenburg's questions one at a time. And if I may share my screen here, I'll try to do this. Well, maybe I can't share my screen.
Trevor, let me change roles for you, and then you'll be able to share your screen. Hold on.
Okay. Okay, so just to address these questions. So I believe Mr. Van Valkenburg was asking about the existing parking lot and if the pavement would extend past where the existing parking lot ends. So to be clear, this is a private parking lot owned by Healthwise Incorporated, and they have been providing shared parking services for the trailhead area for more than the last 10 years, just as a courtesy. And in fact, I would like to highlight that they were the ones that actually sold us this parcel in order to create this parking lot. And they donated $50,000 towards the purchase price of these parcels to make that happen. So that's going to allow Healthwise to reclaim their private parking lot, and this parking lot will no longer be shared. So this will be privately owned. There is a 5-foot property line setback for their parking lot on their parcel. Additionally, there would be a 5-foot setback for our new newly proposed parking lot here. So moving on to the second issue that Mr. Van Valkenburg asked was about the large willow tree that is essentially shown right here in this area. Boise City Forestry has had a look at essentially 7 of the trees in the area, and they've deemed those 2 large willow trees to actually be in very, very poor health, and they're actually a kind of a danger to the public, and they need to be removed immediately. So were we making these trailhead improvements or not, those trees would need to come out because they are a danger to the public. To the third issue, the trees that we're going to be planting, actually we're asking for a variance to the parking lot design standards to move these proposed landscape planters to each of the corners of the newly proposed parking lot. And so the new trees that we're planting will actually double the amount of canopy that is there now. The other issue is this parking lot is designed to accommodate 13 spaces on the north and 13 spaces on the south. This will also be kind of a designated turnaround for the public termination of Harrison Hollow Drive there. The gentleman also asked about pathway improvements, and I'll just go ahead and move to this screen. We see that the new parking lot that is going to provide a crosswalk that connects to the newly sidewalk that we will build that connects to the existing sidewalk down here to the south. And as we see that the trailhead access with the new signage here is going to have some kind of terraced rock or gravel to kind of formalize the trail access. But beyond the new bathroom and this formalized trailhead access, this will just remain as natural pathway. Next is the width of the driveway, which is the subject of our variance. We can see that this rock wall here that goes along the property line, we start up here to the north with a 5-foot property setback, but as we move south, we need to shrink it up to 3 foot here. So the standard setback is 5 foot. We're asking for a variance to shrink it down to 3 feet in this area. Just like Mr. Moser showed within our letter of intent, this is the 3 foot setback versus the 5 foot up here up north. And the last question was just in regards to notification on the neighborhood meeting that was held in December at Longfellow Elementary. I'd be happy to look into our notification list to see if Mr. Van Valkenburg was included on that list, and if he was not, be happy to look into as to why that happened. So anyways, with that, I will stand for any additional questions the commission might have, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kessner. So at this time, we'll close the hearing to the public comment, and the item is before the commission.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Finfock.
I move to approve CVA 20-12 along with the recommended standard conditions of approval.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Gillespie.
Or Schaefer.
Or Shaver, either one.
Is it Schaefer? Gillespie, you did this. It was
I did this.
confusing.
You talked. You pick.
Okay, we have a motion to approve from Commissioner Finfrock and a second from Commissioner Schaefer. Is there any discussion?
Madam Chairman,
Commissioner Gillespie.
obviously I support the motion, and I'd like to specifically thank on the record Healthwise for working with the city in this kind of a tight little space, but very important space for all the neighbors. And I was very pleased to hear that they're helping us out. So thanks, Healthwise.
Any further discussion? Okay, will the clerk please call the vote?
Ted,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
Finfrock,
Aye.
Bratnober.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, thank you. The next item for discussion is item number 4. This is CVA 20-9, Sherry Battazo at 1110 West Eastman Street. This is a variance. And we'll start with staff. And you have the floor now, please, Mr. Mansfield.
Sorry about that. Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if you can't see it. Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair, Commissioners. The next item on tonight's agenda is a request for a variance to encroach into the front and street side yard setbacks for a new single-family home in an R1CH zone. The subject parcel is located on the northwest corner of 11th and Eastman Streets, 1 block away from the Hyde Park Neighborhood Activity Center. The applicant proposes to construct a 2.5-story single-family home with a below-grade garage. A 644 square foot existing home would be converted to an accessory dwelling unit through a separate application. A variance is requested for the new home to encroach 10 feet into the street side yard setback along Eastman Street and encroach 5 feet into the front yard setback along 11th Street for off-street parking. The Historic Preservation Commission unanimously approved the design of the home on January 27th, 2020. At 26.5 feet tall, the proposed house will be roughly 2 feet taller at its peak than the neighboring home to the north. A special circumstance exists to justify each variance. First, the lot is only 30 feet wide. Maintaining a 15-foot street side yard setback would leave just a 10-foot wide building envelope. No functional residential structure could be built within this envelope, especially when considering the provision of required parking. Second, the existing structure limits the depth of the proposed single-family home. To provide for 2 off-street parking spaces, the applicant proposes a 38-foot deep tandem garage. To maintain the required 6 feet of separation between the new and existing structures, the distance to the face of the garage from the property line must be 15 feet rather than the 20 feet required by code. Notably, the proposed structure lies entirely outside of the clear vision triangle shown here in blue. This slide shows the location of the edge of the proposed structure. The 5-foot north or right side yard setback is allowed by right and will match the adjacent home. The 15-foot setback will also match the front face and porch of the northern neighbor's home. The green shaded area is the stairway to the proposed porch. This 10-foot setback is allowed by the Substandard Lot Development Code and was approved by the Historic Preservation Commission. The applicant gathered several signatures of no objection to the project. The planning team did receive 10 letters opposing the project. Opposition centered around 3 main categories. First, there was concern over vehicle, bicycle, and pedestrian safety. As noted earlier, the clear vision triangle will remain unobstructed. Next, neighbors expressed concern that this particular home would not be in keeping with the neighborhood's character. As stated in the staff report, many other homes on this block and across the north end do encroach into setbacks. While the massing may differ from some of the surrounding homes, the Historic Preservation Commission considered this concern when they unanimously voted to grant the proposal a certificate of appropriateness. The third point of contention focuses on the impact to the northern neighbor. While the garage does extend to 15 feet from the property line, the only section of the home that extends past this 15-foot mark into the front yard setback is the stairway to the porch on the south side of the front facade, farthest from the northern neighbor's lot. Within 1 linear block of the subject parcel along Eastman Street, not a single structure meets the 15-foot Eastman Street setback. As evidenced by the development pattern of the neighborhood, good design knows no setback. As detailed in the staff report, the addition of a new unit and the preservation of an existing historic home near a vibrant neighborhood activity center is supported by a laundry list of comprehensive plan objectives. For the reasons outlined above, the planning team recommends approval of the variance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mansfield. We will next hear from the applicant, and we'll start with 10 minutes, please.
Hello, my name is Ken Reed.
Yes, we can hear. Please go ahead.
Oh, thank you. And I'm the architect for the project, and my address is 2415 Compass Drive, Boise. So this project is approved by the Historic Commission, as Ethan stated, in January, and by unanimous vote, and no one appealed that decision. One nearby but non-adjacent neighbor turned out to testify in opposition to the project, but at the end of the presentation, he actually changed his mind and supported the project. I was pleased to also receive accolades for this design on how well its historic style and its use of materials like sandstone, similar to many historic buildings nearby, would add to the neighborhood. In discussions with staff for both historic review and planning and zoning regarding this design, we have striven to create a unique solution for this difficult site. The primary design constraint is that if we remove this existing structure to the rear to facilitate parking, the lot would become legally unbuildable due to the small size of a corner lot that is less than 35 feet wide. So the decision to keep the existing building in its historic location and convert it, because of its small size, to an accessory dwelling unit was considered by staff the best approach. So to repeat, we're asking for 2 variances to reduce the front parking setback from 20 to 15 feet and to reduce the eastman side setback from 15 to 5 feet. So as noted above, both a hardship and an exceptional circumstance exist regarding each variance request. The city requires 2 off-street parking spaces, and placement of those spaces must be at least 6 feet from the existing building on this property, necessitating a reduction of the front setback in order to fit the spaces in. We have visually reduced this impact by creating a garage that is partially below grade. We are requesting the street side setback to be reduced from 15 feet to 5 feet because without this reduction, the proposed building could only be 10 feet wide. That width would preclude the ability to either park or create living space, thus likewise rendering the property unbuildable. This reduction in street side setback will be compatible with the neighborhood as many of these houses along Eastman Street are set more closely to the street than the standard setback. I would refer you to the Sanborn maps provided by staff for historic review. So neither of these requested setbacks will impact the vision triangle of the corner lot that has been graphically demonstrated for this project. Granting the variances will not be in conflict with the comprehensive plan or affect a change in zoning as stated by staff for approval. Granting of the variances will not be materially detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare, or injurious to the property or improvements of the other property owners, or the quiet enjoyment thereof. I understand that the neighbor to the north, Mr. Ritter, objects to the variances based on his assertion that his property would be negatively impacted if they are granted. It's hypocritical of Mr. Ritter to claim injury for this property when he apparently had no concern for doing the same thing to his neighbor to the north of this property when he demolished a previously existing home and built his current 3-level house. Neither of these requested setback variances will affect the neighbor to the north. Mr. Ritter's side setback bordering Mr. Ritter's property is the standard 5 feet by rule, and the proposed structure complies with that setback, and no variance is required. The requested Eastman Street side setback variance will not affect Mr. Ritter's property as it is not within his view and it does not border his property. And the requested reduction of the front setback to 15 feet matches the front setback of Mr. Ritter's house. So it would be no detriment whatsoever to his property. And I would also like to address another of the specific assertions Mr. Ritter has made through his attorney. Mr. Ritter states that the proposed structure would block natural light to his home and essentially block any view Mr. Ritter has from the south side of his house. There's no legal standing to object to the blocking of Mr. Ritter's view, since Mr. Ritter has a basement with egress windows, a main floor with windows, and an upper floor with windows, 3 floors. Facing south, there is no way to build a home of any height that would not block the view from Mr. Ritter's windows. In essence, Mr. Ritter is objecting to any building at all. Again, it is extremely hypocritical of Mr. Ritter to protest an action he has taken previously by himself. I would also like to highlight that the applicant has obtained a written statement of non-objection to the variances in support of this project from all but 2 of the adjacent properties, including the residents as renters, as well as owners who reside out of state, and the North End Neighborhood Association, who supports both the conversion of the existing home to an ADU and the variances required to construct the additional house. The 2 properties who object are Mr. Ritter to the north and a resident but not owner of a property across the street and to the south, who had concern regarding the vision triangle. Both of these personal objections have been addressed by this presentation. I'd like to turn over the remaining time to my client's representative, her attorney, Terry Pickens Manweather. Is she there?
Looks like we need to change you to panelist, Terry, so hold on one moment.
South 9th Street, Suite 240, Boise, Idaho 83702. I am the attorney representative for the applicant, Sherry Battazzo. I have been asked to look at the legalities of the application and of the objections and give my position and opinion on the application as it pertains to the proposal to use both the accessory dwelling unit and to build the new residence next to Mr. Ritter's current and existing house. In looking at all of the evidence in the record and looking at the Boise City Code, along with the City of Boise Comprehensive Plan, it is clear that the proposed application not only meets the criteria of the comprehensive plan, it almost exceeds what the City of Boise is looking for infill in the North End. In particular, the Historic Commission unanimously agreed that this particular construction on this residence would enhance the neighborhood in 2 ways. One, the facade and the actual construction and materials used would be in compliance and in conformance with those in the area. Secondarily, given the need for higher density homes, higher density lots in the North End, this would serve that purpose as well by adding the accessory dwelling unit, the ADU. While that is not subject to this particular variance, I did want to make note that that is something that the applicant has considered, that's something the applicant understands, and that is something that the applicant accepts, and that the North End Neighborhood Association, most of the neighbors, and the applicant herself all agree that this would be a good addition to the neighborhood. With respect to the setbacks and the variances, from a legal perspective, it is true that we are seeking a variance. It's true that we're seeking shorter setbacks, but there is absolutely good cause for this. Again, this is a very narrow lot. This is a 30-foot wide lot. And without a variance, you could not build a home on this lot, which does allow for this commission to grant the variance and approve the variance. The variances do not create in any way a danger or a risk to the public, and they certainly don't create a danger or a risk to the surrounding properties. So with that in mind, the variances of the 15 feet for the parking and the 5 feet for the Eastman Street setback would be appropriate and in conformance with what has also happened up and down Eastman Street and 11th Street. I think the most important question that has to be asked is, there has been an objection based on whether or not Mr. Ritter to the north is going to lose his view. I have researched the property, I have researched the plats and the area, and Mr. Ritter does not possess a view easement. To the contrary, he has chosen to build a home in the north end of Boise that everyone knows full well is not a view area. So to raise an objection based on lack of view, there would have to be some legally substantive argument as to why Mr. Ritter would be entitled to his view in the north end in a very high density residential area. The fact of the matter is there is not a legal basis for that objection, and so I'd ask that the commission disregard that objection of Mr. Ritter. With regard to the concern about the corner, Mr. Mansfield has very adequately addressed, and staff has confirmed that the view corridor and the safety corridor triangle is completely clear and will not pose a problem for this particular structure. That being said, I could find no other legal basis why the Planning and Zoning Commission could not grant the variances as requested, and I would ask them to do so accordingly. Thank you, and I certainly appreciate any questions if necessary.
Thank you. Do we have any representative from the North End Neighborhood Association to speak on this item tonight? Please virtually raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to questions from the commission. Okay, seeing no questions, we will move on to the sign-up sheet. And first up, we have Mr. Ritter. Please start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Jim Ritter, 1601 North 11th Street. Page 5 of the project report states that the lot is only 30 feet wide and maintain a 15-foot wide street side setback would leave a 10-foot wide building envelope, no functional residential structure to be built. The architect's drawing indicates the lot is actually 32 feet, not 30 feet wide. So the building envelope would be 12 feet, assuming the architect is correct. It's simply not true that a 12-foot wide home cannot be functional. The depth of the proposed house is only constrained by the recently reclassified ADU, which is 175% of the current ADU size restrictions. Page 5 and 6 of the report state that demolition is unpalatable and that if existing home were demolished, the subject parcel will be unbuildable per building code 110603.3. The idea that the building code cannot be modified, but the ADU restrictions and the front and the side setback codes can be modified to allow for development defies logic. This property can easily accommodate an alley in the garage with an ADU that meets current code and a single-story home with a full basement that will blend in with the neighborhood. Page 6 of the report fails to clearly state the immediate neighbors' objections. The objections are not only the unnecessary traffic hazard as stated in the project report, they also include the height of the structure, the fact that it'll be a 2.5-story wall of stucco 5 feet from the sidewalk, the conversion of the existing house into an ADU, the reduction of open space on the lot, and the overall negative aesthetic impact of the neighborhood, as well as my home. Even though the project will not intersect a clear vision triangle, that does not mean there is no impact to visibility in a very busy intersection. The clear vision triangle is a guide, just like the speed limit of 65 miles per hour on the freeway is a guide, but it's not always safe to drive that fast depending upon the conditions of the road. I trust the city understands that by ignoring the neighbors' concerns and approving this project, they could be held liable when somebody gets hurt. I also like to point out that the only 2 no objection forms submitted by the homeowners are an immediate neighbor who has rescinded their support. In summary, in reference to the 3 conclusions in section 8, there is no real hardship nor exceptional circumstance for building a functional structure on this lot in a manner that is consistent with the majority of the immediate neighbors' interests and in line with the comprehensive plan. There is no need to grant a variance to reduce the amount of waste going to landfill or increasing the number and type of housing options. This can be achieved through recycling and repurposing of the materials during demolition and building an off-street parking garage with an ADU that meets current ADU standards. Granting of reduced setbacks will be material detrimental to public safety and very injurious to the property of other property owners and the quiet enjoyment thereof. This is clearly documented in the objections submitted to the city. Finally, the unanimous approval of the Historic Preservation Commission was unfairly influenced by the fact that the property owner is a community liaison to the Historic Commission. Therefore, any support by the commission should be viewed as biased and not influence this decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the sign-up sheet, we have Ms. Christine Webb.
Madam Chair, I don't see her on the attendee list tonight.
Okay. I see a hand raised, but if that's somebody to testify, we'll get to people that are not on the sign-up sheet at the end of the list here. So then after Ms. Webb, we have Ms. Hess. Christina Hess.
Madam Chair, I also don't see her.
Not seeing her. Okay. And then next up, we have Mr. Spouts, who I do see on the list here.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I want to speak in support of this project. I agree with the assessment of the city. I live at 912 West Brumback in Boise, so maybe 300 or 400 feet from this property, and I walk by it frequently. I think it'll fit nicely in with the surrounding character and give one more family an option to live in a lovely part of town adjacent to the Hyde Park activity area, close to other parks, close to downtown, and it's a lovely opportunity for the future family that will live there. I think based on the particulars of the properties, the variances are very well justified, and I am a strong supporter of this option. Thank you.
Thank you. And that was, for the record, that was Patrick Spouts. And so that's all we had for the sign-up sheet. And I see one hand up, so we'll see if that Mr. Keith Brion would like to have his 3 minutes. Please start with your name and address.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Yes, this is Keith Brion. I'm the owner of 1603 5 and 7 North 11th Street. And I would like to agree with my neighbor to the south, Mr. Ritter, that this change does not fit the neighborhood. They're essentially splitting the lot and building two primary dwellings. And this does not go according to the city's plan of design plan to have garages not facing the public street. So that's my comment. I don't agree with this being built.
Thank you. The next hand that I see raised is Ms. Murphy. Please start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Rachel.
Oh, I think we just somehow, you've just been muted, Rachel. If you don't mind unmuting and starting over with your name and address.
Okay, how about now? Okay.
Yes.
I'm Rachel Murphy. I live at 1610 North 11th Street, Boise, Idaho 83702, which is just across the street from the proposed dwelling. And I want to speak in opposition of the building project. I side with Jim Ritter in that this is an extremely small, narrow lot, and building two houses, especially a 2.5-story house with 5 feet of separation from Jim's house to the north is jamming too much house onto one small lot. I also live with 3 rentals around me, and I'm aware that changing the existing house to an ADU and building a new house in the open area is going to give me yet another rental to live next to. And I moved into the North End in order to live amongst neighbors and people that I know and trust. And I don't want to live next to another rental property, especially, hopefully, not a short-term rental property. And I would like to say that it absolutely impacts Jim's feel of his home, because it's going to be a building right next to his windows that will block his southern light into his home. And it's going to be 5 feet away from his house. So it's my understanding that Jim, and I'm speaking for Jim here, and I don't, I'm not positive he agrees with this, but in our conversations in the neighborhood, we've agreed to the fact that potentially a single family home might be a good solution to this proposal. Also, I want to say that 11th Street has been designated as a bike path in the future, and to say that it's not going to impact visibility at this corner, I think is unlikely. I think that if we're going to have bikers going up and down 11th Street in, hoping to keep bikers safer in our North End neighborhood, this isn't the way to do it. So that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Is there anybody else that would like to testify tonight that was not on the sign-up sheet? If so, please virtually raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, we will move next to rebuttal from the applicant, if you would like it, please.
Okay, I think I'm on. So I think one of the main things to reassert is that if we knock down the existing structure, the lot becomes unbuildable. So in preservation of the existing structure, we're able to accommodate a separate home. And we did get a survey in the last period, a little bit ago, and it's true that's a 30-foot lot, so I'll be reducing the width of the building by 2 feet. That still means it's going to be a home of 20 feet wide instead of 22. So Mr. Ritter's home is 15 feet wide, so I think it shouldn't visually or physically affect the building that much at all. So there is an existing curb cut that we are going to apply to the parking. So we're not taking street parking. This has been established. And we did meet the vision triangle. So, and again, as council has suggested, it's not a legal standing to guarantee views out windows, because this building is not going to be just 5 feet from Mr. Ritter's property. It's going to be 10, because Mr. Ritter has a 5-foot setback. This building by code has a 5-foot setback. So there'll be actually a 10-foot gap between the two structures. And the one thing I think I wanted to ask Ethan to make sure he said correctly, he thinks that this building is, he stated that this building is going to be 2.5 feet taller when it's actually going to be shorter by the same amount. So I think that covers most of the elements that are sort of applicable to this. And I'd invite Ms. Pickens-Manweather to step in if she has any more comments she'd like to make.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I did want to address Ms. Murphy's concerns. I appreciate and understand the concern about having a bunch of rentals surrounding you. The whole point of having an accessory dwelling unit attached to your primary residence is it is confirming that it will in fact be a single family dwelling. There will not be a rental in this house. This will be owner occupied as required by the city code of accessory dwelling units. The accessory dwelling unit can be rented, but the primary residence must be owner occupied. So I can assure you that you will have a neighbor that owns and has an invested interest in that property. I did want to clarify, and I'm glad that Mr. Reed did too, that it isn't 5 feet from Mr. Ritter's home, it's 10. And that is actually quite standard in the North End. It's quite standard for all of these properties to be very close. That's the actual cultural love and aesthetic of the North End. You don't go to the North End to be on a 1 acre lot. You go to, the suburban areas of Boise to be on a 1 acre lot. I appreciate that this lot is small and I appreciate the concerns, but there is nothing substantially illegal about building the residence as designed by Mr. Reed. The historic district is not a biased organization. They do look at every construction and every proposal, and this one got unanimous approval. It got unanimous approval because the elevations of this house are beautiful and they do fit in with the North End aura and feel. So with that, I would defer to Ms. Patazzo. I'm not certain if she is on. I did know that she did want to say very briefly that she had spoken with various neighbors and they were in support of the project.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, we will close the hearing and the item is before the commission.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Zuckerman.
I move we approve item 4, CVA 20-9.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Schaefer. Any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Zuckerman.
with this, I think we see the exceptional circumstances that we're looking for in this variance, and with such a small lot, that's why I'm supporting the variance. I also think that the commission, as the applicant stated, shouldn't be, judging things based off view, or else we're never going to see anything built in infill, and it looks like it fits what the comp plan is looking for infill. So I support the project.
Further discussion?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Obviously, I'm in support of the motion. I agree with Commissioner Zuckerberg's comments so far. I think the applicant's done a nice job of designing a structure to work within the constraints of the property. The setback to the north, regardless of the lot width, there would always be a 5-foot setback. So had this lot been wider, there could very well still be a building wall 5 feet from the property line. So I think that's kind of an immaterial argument. I think they've also done a nice job of approaching the streets and with regards to the vision triangles. This is a detached sidewalk on both streets. There's plenty of space to the street beyond that. So I feel like the visibility is really not much of an issue there around the corners. Considering the fact that we also have historic preservation approval to date, I think that also speaks volumes that, it's been vetted, the design looks good. I think it fits within the character of the neighborhood, and they have that approval. So I'm in favor of this motion.
Any further discussion?
Madam Chair?
Yes. Commissioner Bratnober.
Yes. So I'm going to have to be opposed to this because, first of all, as I read the project report, I mean, it really is a nice setup, beautiful facade, and all of that. However, excuse me, the accessory dwelling unit is problematic here because the code is very clear and actually pretty stringent on this. There is a hard cap at 600 square feet for ADUs, and this comes in at 644, which is fairly significantly over. It's not like it's 5 feet over or something like that. In 11-06-03.1.a.1, it basically says, under no circumstances may the 600 square foot maximum be exceeded. And so while the effort is great, I think it's an excellent use of the property, a great design and all that, the ADU is problematic. Now, there was something with DRH 19-00567 listed in the project report that talks about construct a single family home, existing home to ADU approved. Now, I'm not sure what weight that bears in terms of granting some sort of variance to what the code says or anything like that. So I'm just unfamiliar with that. But in this case, we do have a pretty specific problem with the ADU, so I will not be supporting the motion.
Commissioners, can I just jump in real quick and point out that the ADU code has been changed, I believe mid last year, to allow the threshold at 700 square feet. Our code online does show 600 still, so I just wanted to make sure that's clear for you all.
Touche. Thank you excuse me, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Bratnober.
Touche, Ms. Accord. I appreciate that, and I withdraw my my issue, and I will support the motion. Thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion before us to approve item number 4, CVA 20-9. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Stead?
Aye.
Schaefer?
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
Finfrock,
Aye.
Bratnober.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, thank you. The next item before us is item number 8. This is CAR 19-31 and PUD 19-41, Fig Village at Parkside LLC, 511 North Maple Grove Road, a rezone and a conditional use permit. We will first hear from the staff, and the floor is yours, Ms. Womack.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if there's any problems with that. Awesome. Madam Chair, Commissioners, the next item on tonight's agenda is a rezone of 5.16 acres from M1D Light Industrial with Designer View to C1D DA Neighborhood Commercial with Designer View and Development Agreement. The site is located at 511 North Maple Grove Road. A conditional use permit for a planned residential development comprised of 102 multifamily units is also included. The site was annexed into the city of Boise in 1987 and has never been formally developed. The property has been rezoned from M1D to C1D and back again twice. Previous proposals have included neighborhood retail uses and a self-storage facility. The applicant now intends to construct multifamily. As the applicant outlined, prior to the Boise Town Square Mall creation, this area was intended to support mainly industrial uses. However, with the construction of the mall, this area became the intersection of both industrial and commercial. This is evident as adjacent to the site are restaurants, multi-tenant commercial, a warehouse, a self-storage facility, and a nursing home. You can also see in the outlying areas, residential has also been included in the area. The requested C1D DA zone is compatible with the comprehensive plan as it designates the site as industrial on the land use map, within which C1 zone is allowed. It's important to note, though, the subject property is uniquely located where the industrial meets the mixed use land use designation associated with the mall. The prior rezone approvals confirm that either C1 or M1 zoning would be appropriate, and residential uses have never been prohibited on the site. The property to the north has also followed this pattern, electing for C1 zoning in order to support commercial and restaurant uses. Although the comprehensive plan does encourage maintaining a sufficient supply of industrial land, it also encourages redesignating areas that cannot be feasibly served for less intensive uses and concentrating economic development efforts elsewhere. Further, multifamily is encouraged close to the mall and adjacent to businesses that can be supported by nearby residents. Infill development is also directed to vacant lots suitable for change. This will avoid costly extensions of transportation facilities and minimize travel distances. Transit service is also available along both Emerald Street and Maple Grove. It's important to note the planning team does not generally encourage rezoning to commercial zones for residential unit uses. However, due to the property's unique location, size, and available transit service, it's an acceptable use of the commercial zoning designation. A development agreement which prohibits future automobile-oriented uses has been included. The prohibited uses shown here will ensure compliance with the comprehensive plan and encourage development of transit-oriented uses rather than a reliance on automobiles. The proposal includes construction of 102 total multifamily units at 19.8 units per acre. Site access will be provided by internal service drives off both Emerald Street and Maple Grove Road. Existing 7-foot wide attached sidewalk curb and gutter line both streets. The planning team recommends this be replaced with detached curb, gutter, sidewalk, and an 8-foot wide planter strip. This has been included as a condition of approval. This is in alignment with the comprehensive plan, which encourages installation of detached sidewalks and street trees along major travel corridors in the West Bench to improve comfort and safety. There have been some concerns regarding tree placement and the location of utilities along the right-of-way. In the event Idaho Power will not allow street trees in the existing easement, street trees will be installed behind the detached sidewalks. A variety of tall grasses and native shrubs shall be provided in the parkway. Final plant variety will be approved by design review. The proposal includes 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units within 3 building technologies. The project meets the vehicular and bicycle parking requirements, as well as complies with the standards of the Development Code, the Comprehensive Plan, and the citywide design review guidelines and standards. A design review permit is also under review. Lastly, as the development is over 1 acre in size, 2 amenities are required. The project includes a central clubhouse, pool, and playground for future residents. In addition, a 10-foot easement along the west property line abutting the canal is included for a future regional pathway. A condition of approval also requires an easement be dedicated to VRT for a future bus stop along Maple Grove Road. Comments from adjacent industrial neighbors were received, and some are here tonight. Concerns focused around their interpretation that residential uses are prohibited within the CC&Rs of the subdivision. In addition, there was a perceived incompatibility between the existing industrial and new residential uses, and fear future residents will inhibit their ability to operate. CC&Rs are private agreements, which the city does not enforce or interpret. The subject property was also referred to as located in the midst of an industrial park. As you can see here, the property is on the edge of an industrial area buffered on 3 sides by arterial roadways and a canal. The only side of the project adjacent to an existing warehouse will have 283 feet of separation, an 8-foot CMU wall, and dense landscaping to buffer the adjacent uses and future tenants. Further, this project does not increase the residential traffic within a contained industrial area. Site access is provided to Maple Grove Road and Emerald Street, arterial roadways, which provide regional access to all Boise City residents, not only the adjacent industrial uses. Lastly, it's evident an industrial use may not be the best use for this property, as the site has never been formally developed, rezoned twice, and previous proposals have never been built. In conclusion, with the recommended conditions of approval, the proposed development complies with the standards of approval. As such, the planning team recommends approval of the rezone and conditional use permit. The Planning and Zoning Commission makes a recommendation to City Council on the rezone and DA, and a final decision on the PUD. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I believe you might be muted.
Thank you. We'll next hear from the applicant. I think we have Mr. Kent Brown up next. We'll start with 10 minutes, please. Please start with your name and address.
Madam Chair, I don't see Kent Brown on this list. I believe, can whoever's representing the applicant tonight, please virtually raise your hand.
John Carpenter, it looks like. Okay, we'll get you scooted over to having talking permissions.
So can I talk now?
Yes, please start with your name and address, and we'll start with 10 minutes.
Okay. I'm glad someone stopped me because I was almost done. Kent Brown, 3161 East Springwood, Meridian, Idaho. And we have reviewed the staff report and have been working with staff to come up with something that we find to be really nice, and we're accepting of the staff report, and I'd stand for any questions that any of the commissioners might have.
Thank you. So there is no neighborhood association for this area, so we'll move on to questions from the commission, please, if there are any.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Finfrock.
I just had a quick question for Nicolette. What are the units per acre for this application? And my apologies if I missed it in the staff report, but I couldn't locate it.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Finfrock, it is coming in at 19.8 units per acre.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any additional questions from the commission?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Schaefer.
This is also a question for Nicolette. Nicolette, would you mind just walking us back through again the past rezone applications for this property?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Schaefer, yes. So in 1996, the property was annexed, in 1987, and then it was rezoned in 1996 from M1D to C1D for neighborhood convenience retail uses. And then in 2017, it was rezoned from C1D back to M1D for self-service storage facility. And you can see this on the history of previous actions table in the project report.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Any further questions?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Finfrock.
Thank you. Just a clarification also for Nicolette. So if we were to rezone to C1D, it does allow for residential areas. Is that correct? If I'm understanding that right?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Finfrock, that is correct. The C1 zone allows residential uses.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Finfrock.
So just like you were saying in roughly 2017, it would have allowed for residential build on it?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Finfrock, that is correct. There was no condition saying it wouldn't have been allowed.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, we will move to the public sign-up sheet. And first up, we have Tara Martins Miller.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, you'll have 3 minutes, and please start with your name and address.
Sure. My name is Tara Martins Miller. I'm an attorney with Holland and Hart. Our address is 800 West Main Street, Suite 1750, Boise, Idaho, 83702. I represent SSP. SSP is a partnership of 2 brothers, Stan Zatika and Steve Zatika. And Mr. Steve Zatika will be also testifying this evening. SSP owns 2 buildings near this property within the industrial park. And is opposed to this residential development. The occupants of the 2 buildings that are owned by SSP is a industrial use, a manufacturing use, and a warehouse use. These are not warehouses only. Smoke Guard is the tenant. It's a long-term tenant for our client. It is a very loud area. It is a very lots of lights. And our client will address more specifically the uses, but it is incorrect to state that this is a warehouse use. We anticipate extreme complaints. Doesn't make any sense that a family or individual would want to live near such uses. I also am aware that There is opposition by a even closer industrial use. Envirotech, who is represented by Justin Cranny, and he will advise of some of their more even specific concerns, as well as the fact that this is really such an incredibly incompatible use, and that it would result in values for our clients decreasing and increasing issues with a long-term tenant that our client has continued to serve.
30 seconds.
Pardon me?
30 seconds.
Oh, thank you so much. And so I understand that Mr. Crane will even more carefully address the fact that this is not in line with the comprehensive plan. It clearly should not be rezoned as requested. But I also wanted to address, just in conclusion, that there is a very, very strong conflict of interest in the variance under the CCNRs. The CCNRs were signed by Mr. Moore. The application was signed by Mr. Moore. And Mr. Moore is selling the property at the detriment to our clients' interests without proper consideration of the members of the industrial park. Thank you.
Thank you. And next up on the sign-up sheet, we have Steve Zatica, please.
Can you hear me, Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Yes, my brother and I purchased a 32,000 square foot building in 2016. Smoke Guard is an industrial design and manufacturing firm for waterproof or fireproof curtains in commercial buildings that go over doors. And they've been a very good tenant for us. And this last year, we built another 10,000 square foot facility for them behind the existing building to help with their manufacturing and shipping. So they actually design, manufacture, and ship in and out of this facility. And knowing that, we got couple of emails from FIG's attorneys, but in here, the one attorney sent me an email in February, and she states in here, it's Julie Klein Fisher, that if we're not on board to terminate the CCNRs, that they would just get a variance. And basically they've steamrolled us. There was supposed to be an architectural design committee, and Mr. Moore didn't contact us or involve us in any of this. Obviously they stand to make a lot of money with the residential, but for us and my brother, it's a long-term investment in our tenant. And we're concerned that, you know, this could drive our tenant off with more traffic. We already experienced theft in that area. You bring in a bunch of renters, you're going to increase the theft, noise complaints. And I really worry that with all of our trucks coming and going, that this is not a safe area for residential. And I understand it says they've got a path back by the canal. You know, if you get kids around this area, it could be very, very dangerous. And we just feel that Mr. Moore has not been forthcoming. He's been basically railroading us over this, and that he has everything to gain, and all we have to gain is a loss in our property value or possibly a loss of our long-term tenant. And this is not right. We bought this property knowing it was industrial, and we were in an industrial zone, and we just don't feel this is going to be any upside for our property or our tenant. And I thank you and the commissioners for your time.
Thank you. If there's anybody else here that would like to testify on this item tonight that is not on the sign-up sheet, please virtually raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, we will move to a rebuttal from the applicant. if you'd like that. Oh, I just saw a hand go up. I assume that's then to, okay, a couple now. We'll start with Justin Craney, please. You'll have 3 minutes, and please start with your name and address for the record.
This is Justin Craney. I have a slideshow. Sorry, I did sign up online. I should have been on the sign up list. I apologize. So can I put a slideshow up?
Yes.
Yes, let me change your role. Hold on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just give us a moment, please.
Of course, that's why I'm asking. Okay, can you still hear me and see my slides?
Yes, we can. Again, please start with your name and address, and 3 minutes. We can see and hear you.
Thank you. Justin Craney, Holly Troxel, 877 Main Street, Boise, Idaho. I represent Envirotech Industries, LLC, the owner of the property immediately to the south of the property in consideration right now. Envirotech Industries is a manufacturing company that does machining, fabrication, and assembly on its property. This is an industrial use. Envirotech Industries is opposed to this project for the simple fact of the residential component is incompatible with Envirotech's industrial use of its property. Furthermore, under Idaho law and the Boise City Code, a rezone, a PUD, and a CUP all require compliance with the comprehensive plan. So if we go to Blueprint Boise, we are presented with the land use map. The land use map identifies where the city would support development of permitted uses and is intended to serve as a guide for future zone changes. So if we look at this map, it is clearly marked as industrial. Referring back to the Boise blueprint, if we look at what the industrial designation is intended to include, it is to provide for the concentrated areas of employment, primary uses, heavy and light manufacturing, warehousing, storage, industrial parks, auto repair, and etc. Secondary uses are to support those restaurants, offices, health clubs, convenience stores, etc. Nowhere does it say residential. If residential were intended to be allowed where an industrial designation is found on the map, it would say so. If you look at the C1 description, it does allow for residential. This does not. There's a plain reason why. Industrial and residential uses are incompatible. This application is a classic example of why. If we look at Envirotech's operations, it operates 2 shifts. First one starting at 4 a.m., ending at 4:30 p.m. The second starting at 4:30 and ending at 2 a.m. There's 22 hours each day of operations. This includes deliveries. Deliveries come off Maple Grove and traverse the northern edge of Envirotech's properties, right next to the residential development. There are 40 to 45 deliveries per day. Most of these come from semi-trucks. That 8-foot wall will not do much to stop the sound or noise generated by the delivery. There will be sounds of employees coming and going at 2 a.m., 4 a.m., 4:30 p.m. This is not some place that residents are going to enjoy living with this much noise and traffic and use. In short, 2 more points. C1 zoning does permit residential use only with a conditional use permit, which requires compliance with the comprehensive plan. Simply because this property has not been developed for 33 years does not mean that the requirement to comply with the comprehensive plan can be ignored, nor can it overcome that an existing industrial use would be anywhere close to compatible with a planned residential use. Thank you for your time. I stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you. We will move along. I think I saw another hand that had been raised, but if you would like to testify again on this item or testify on this item tonight and have not yet already, please virtually raise your hand. Okay. Seeing none, cautiously seeing none, we will close the public portion of the hearing, and the item is before the commission.
Madam Chair, I believe rebuttal for the applicant.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Would the applicant like 10 minutes for rebuttal, please?
Okay, Julie, you want to take over? Yeah, Madam Commissioner, this is Julie Klein Fisher. I'm the attorney for the applicant. I also have with me Rebecca Arnold, who's the attorney for the WH Moore Company. So we were going to respond, if we might, to the concerns raised by both of the SSP and Envirotech. To begin, the CCNRs which were raised do provide a provision for the architectural committee to, in its sole discretion, allow different uses within the industrial park. In this case, that did occur, and there was a letter that was submitted to the commission. I sent a letter on March 16th that included both the approval by the architectural committee and a couple other items that we thought would be relevant to your consideration. And they also respond to some of the concerns that were raised by the attorneys for both SSP and Envirotech. Specifically, in response to some of their concerns, we proposed doing a deed restriction that would limit any complaints that any industrial uses near the residential property would be could not be considered a nuisance, provided they're in compliance with the other rules and regulations. So we have made an attempt to respond to that concern about potential noise and other uses in the area. I would also point out that we have made a number of efforts to visit with both the SSP's council and Envirotech. I've reached out to them by phone. I've reached out to them both by email, and we also provided letters to them explaining that there was the setback and the wall would be constructed in response to concerns, that the CCNRs do actually allow this development, and it has been proved by the architectural committee, and ask for any other input they might have. So to suggest that they've somehow been blindsided or left out of the discussions, that's simply not true. We've made significant efforts to obtain additional feedback from them to the extent they had any about the project. Yeah, one other issue, I think it was raised by SSP, is that they purchased this property zoned industrial. In fact, if they purchased it in 2016, it would have been designated C1 at that time, which does, permits the uses that are proposed here. So with those comments, I guess I would also add, with respect to the noise and the incompatibility of residential uses nearby, there is a assisted living facility that's directly west of the proposed project that you're reviewing this evening. So there are, in quite close proximity, other residential type uses that are compatible with the proposed project. So with those comments, I'd be happy to try and answer any other questions you might have.
Thank you. No questions at this time. And with that, we will close the hearing, and the item is before the commission.
Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
So I'll try and get the ball rolling and see where we get. So I'm going to move that we recommend approval of CAR 1931 to City Council, and that we finally approve PUD 19-41 with all the terms and conditions in the staff report.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gillespie, a second by Commissioner Zuckerman. Is there a discussion?
Madam Chairman.
Commissioner Gillespie.
So on all things related to the comp plan, particularly these big kind of issues in the comp plan, I think we have to be cognizant of the reality that this property is sat vacant and unused for a long, long period of time. And the comp plan very clearly calls out that we need to develop diverse housing stock and we need to add to the housing stock, and gives all kinds of language around basically the housing crisis in our city and the affordability crisis. So I think that for me is what sort of tips me into approving it. Although I will say I agree with the folks, Ms. Miller and Ms. Fisher and Mr. Craney, that this is clearly, we're pushing the boundary of C1 in approving a purely residential development. I mean, I think C1 generally is meant to be more sort of mixed use, but in this case, given the record of the property and it flipping back and forth, I'm going to support what the applicant wants to do. And I would really be interested in what my fellow commissioners have to say. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Bratnover.
So in support of what Commissioner Gillespie said, in addition to it sitting vacant for so long, it has flipped back and forth in terms of zoning. And so making it a C1 is not outside the realm of imagination here, given that it's been there before. There are several areas where it is supported by Blueprint Boise. When you look at the push for housing near the mall. Now this is probably in about, I don't know, 1.5 mile radius or so. And then also making sure that we have available transit near some of these higher density developments. It is certainly in line with that. So I'll be supporting the motion.
Any further
Madam
discussion?
Chair.
Commissioner Finbrock.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the comprehensive plan also designates the site industrial, which allows for that C1 zoning. So even if it has flipped back and forth, the comprehensive plan is also in support of it, even if it's designated industrial.
Any other comments?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Schaefer.
I'm going to be in favor of the motion as well. Definitely is a challenging one, though. I think, though, that in addition to all the other comments from my fellow commissioners, that just looking at the other services that are in the area, in addition to the mall, I think when you're looking at medical services nearby, some other services, commercial services nearby as well, I think that those provide support for residential in this particular instance. And I'll definitely second Commissioner Gillespie's comments regarding the fact that the property's changed multiple times, the zoning's changed multiple times over the years. So I'm apt to support this endeavor.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Blanchard.
Thank you. I'm also going to be supporting this motion. I agree with my fellow commissioners. I think who summed it up perfectly, that this is it is challenging and it does push the boundaries, but I do see that there are plenty of connections to the comprehensive plan, and that it's also very clearly a mixed use area. So I'm very persuaded by all of that, and I will be supporting the motion.
Any further discussion?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Bratnover.
Sorry for chiming in again, but just to make sure there's one thing on the record, I'm interested as you look at this warranty deed, which I think is definitely a show of good faith. But my question that I just like to pose is the enforceability as time goes by of something like that. I don't know that we can get an answer tonight, but it's certainly something to be thinking about.
Thank you. Any further comments or discussion? Okay. Seeing none, we have a motion to recommend approval for CAR 19-31 and to approve PUD 19-41. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Ted,
Aye.
Schaefer,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Gillespie,
Aye.
Finfrock,
Aye.
Ratnober.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. That concludes the meeting, and thank you everybody for your patience as we make our way through this new format. Have a great night.
Thanks again, Ben.
Thank you all. It's been a pleasure.
Ben.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. You've been so great.
It's been a great time
Thank
working
you,
with you
Ben.
guys.
Thanks, Ben.
We hope to see you in future hearings with testimony.
We shall see. Hope to see you all later. Have a good one, everybody.
Have a great night,
Thank
guys.
you.
All right.
Aye.
Night, everyone.
Bye, everybody.